Hello interwebs, welcome to Let's Fix Computers. I've got a Dell Inspiron 3000 series, I think this is. I think it's a 3000 series. It's really hard to tell with the Inspirons these days. They all seem to look different yet have the same series. Anyway, we've got a couple of things to do. This thing is in for service. It also needs a new DC jack. Let me get a close-up of this guy for you just so you can see what's happened to him. We've also got a broken USB port on the other side. So there's our DC jack. And if you have a look in there, so there's our DC jack. And if you can see, the inside pin there, the plastic on the bottom of it is just a little bit chipped off. So it's not super broken, but it's enough that the charger is really loose in the jack, which means it comes out easily and stuff like that. And then on the other side of the laptop, we've got that USB port there, which, as you can see, is not a happy chappy. The inside blade on that has gone completely gone, and all the pins have been mashed to the back. So we want to deal with that as well. This one, I seem to say this on every repair now, but this should be an assembly job because while we could start soldering in new USB ports and stuff like that, in all probability that USB port is on an I/O board, and it's going to be a lot easier to just replace the I/O board if we can find one. So let's get the back cover off and see if we can find the bits that we need. So let's zap out these screws first and get the back panel off. Who knows? Right, let's open it up. So our seam is around here. I'm not sure if the top or the bottom is coming off. So I'm just going to start prying the case open. And then we'll have a little look inside and just see what things are bolted to. And that'll tell us. Right, and you can see straight away where we started prying up here, the ports are coming away attached to the top case or the palm rest. So I'm going to flip this over and pull off the bottom case. It's roughly what I expected, but it's always hard to tell when the seam is on the top of the laptop, if you see what I mean. It's starts leading you up the garden path. Coming off. There we go. Right. Okay, there's our I/O board for the USB. So that's got a ribbon going across there. So we need to see if we can find a new one of those. And then we've got a DC jack over here. And can we get a better picture of the brokenness of that from here? You know, that doesn't actually look bad. It was kind of hard to tell when the laptop was closed up, but I mean, looking at that now, that kind of doesn't look broken to me. I might just grab a charger and just have a fiddle with that and just see if I'm wasting my time or not. I mean, it doesn't feel great, but this Dell connector doesn't feel great anyway. This is the modern style narrow one, and the center pin on it is kind of too short in my opinion, so it just means that it doesn't really click in until the last couple of millimeters, which makes it feel kind of gross to use. Something roll on Type-C power delivery, because USB Type-C is the future. Let's plug that in and see what happens. Yeah, we got a charge light. Oh, and then we didn't have a charge light. You in? Are you okay? Let's lay that down a sec. So what I do when testing this is, if we plug it in, we get a charge light. It goes out. Then it comes back on. Okay, that's probably just the laptop initiating charge. And what I want to do now is I want to check for a loose connection. So firstly, if there's a bad connection, if I pull the lead out, how quickly does this light turn off? Because there are some laptops where the LED doesn't turn off until like a second after power drops. And for that, you won't see the LED go out if you've got a dodgy cable or a dodgy connection. So waving the cable around isn't actually going to tell you anything. So if I pull that out, so the light goes out immediately. So if there's any interruptions in that connection, we'll see it. So we plug that in. It does the off-on thing again. And so now if I just start abusing this cable, if there were any problems with that connection, we'd see that LED flash or go out or do something. But like, I'm abusing that. I'm being rude. It's fine. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. So I need to check in with the customer and say, tell me about the DC jack again, because that doesn't look broken to me. If you can do all this with it, you know, if the customer is doing anything more than what I'm doing here now, then that's not the laptop's fault. That's the customer's fault. So I might need to check and see. I might need to check in and tell the customer to bring in their charger as well. In fact, I'm going to double check I don't already have it. No, I don't have it. I need to check the customer's charger. I should have taken it from them. Alas, let's get this USB port done. So let's take a closer look at this. So that guy there, that is a, well, I guess you call that a hotbar connection. That needs to be disconnected from the other side is the important thing. So let's unplug the battery. How does that work? Does that unplug from there? It does. Fingernails to victory. All right, pull you out. And can I slide you out? No, we'll just, I guess we'll take the hard drive out as well. Hello, there we go. That didn't want to go. Just unplug this CMOS battery. Come on. So, because this is USB 2 and not 3, it really wouldn't be a big deal to desolder that and put a new one on. But you'd have to find exactly the right USB connector. The problem with replacing ports on a laptop is they're all proprietary. Like, look at the shape of this port. It's been specifically designed to fit onto this I/O board and sink in to a specific height. And you'll get the same issue with often with HDMI connectors and headphone jacks and stuff like that, which is one of the things that makes doing individual port replacement a bit of a ball ache on laptops, is just finding the parts. I'm sure there's parts out there. There's certainly going to be parts out there for very common models. But I would wager that because this is a Dell, and like with many brands, Dell make just too many damn laptops. You know, there's just a different one every 6 months, it seems, and you never see the same model twice. It just seems impossible to find parts. So let's hit up eBay and we'll see what we can find. Let's have a look over here. This is an Inspiron 5100, I believe. I've just taken a closer look at the label on the bottom panel. So let's try Inspiron 5100 USB board. No, 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 no. This is miles off. This isn't remotely what I'm looking for. Let's try Inspiron 5000 USB board. No. That's getting on to the right thing. like, forget the price and the fact that it's £55 delivery from the United States a sec, but, like, let's just see if we can round down what we're looking for here. This is very similar, but it's a slightly different design. Our one has got for some reason or other, our one has got an externally mounted CMOS battery. There's space where the CMOS battery would go. The board is correct, just for some reason or other, they put an external CMOS battery on this one instead of an onboard one. No idea why, but I've got absolutely no clue why you do that. But I assume that the person who designed this gets paid a lot more money than I do. Either way, this seems to be on the right lines, but it's from a different one as well. The fold in that flex is completely different as well. So it's very similar, but it's not what I'm after. We are getting somewhere, though. See if we can find anything else. I'm going to try changing my search term to I/O board. Looks like that's yielding about the same results. What's that? That's £10-ish. That looks good, actually. I got caught out there because the battery was mounted on the board, but that's actually correct. You can see they've taken the CMOS battery and looped it around onto the board, which is fine. Yeah, that looks correct, actually. Can I get a close-up on that? This is a not awful picture. It just doesn't show me the numbers on the board. I wish, like, eBay sellers of the world, please show us a close-up picture so we can see the numbers written on the board, so we can see if all the part numbers and stuff like that look correct. Visually, from a visual identification, though, that is correct. It's the right shape. It's got all the right bits on it, and the price is reasonable. It's £9 used. I will go with that. I think that's what I want. May fit under the models, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, that'll do. I'm buying it. Buy it now. All right, that's purchased. So that's our USB board or I/O board sorted. So the DC board, we've decided we probably don't need that. I need to talk to the customer and get their charger in. In the meantime, this thing also needs a service. So I'm going to get this thing turned on and I'm going to give it a service while I wait for parts to arrive, and we'll go from there. I might also see if I can twist the customer's arm into an SSD upgrade, because this thing's got a hard drive in it, which, I mean, what's the date on this thing? 2017. The laptop is, like 4 years old now. You know, it's reaching midlife cycle. And one conversation with the customer later, and we've got the customer's charger, and yes, we are going to put an SSD in this thing. So we're going to SSD this thing. We've got the replacement USB port on order. So let's take a look at this charger. This is the customer's charger. So spoilers, I've already plugged it in and it didn't work. It was stone dead. So let's do a quick inspection on this just so we can see what's going on. So when you're looking at a charger, the first thing you want to be doing is inspecting the cable. So if we start from the plug end here, firstly, we've got a burn mark in there, and we can actually see the flex, the wires inside the flex. There's no exposed copper, so this thing isn't a full-on death trap, but that's very much a case of that's got to be replaced. Even though there's no exposed copper there, it's just like, that's 240 volts in that wire. Don't mess about with that. So that cable's got to go straight away. So just forget that, unplug that, get rid of it. Then the cable is coming out the end here. Again, no exposed wires that I can, no exposed metal that I can see, but that's not ideal. This is a very common issue to happen on chargers in general. So, you know, I don't think that's our point of failure, but it's a sign that this thing is pretty well worn out. The rest of this wire is in pretty good nick until you get to the end. And if we have a look at this guy here, can you see how this is all malformed? You know, it's relatively straight, but it's got all these sort of bumps and stuff in it. If I compare that to my one, you can see how my nice shiny new one is straight as an arrow, whereas this one looks pretty well mangled, you know. So if I had to guess, I would say our problem is in here, because that has probably been bent and fatigued. And like, look, I can just sit and bend that. I can just between my fingers, no real effort. This one, I can't do that. That doesn't bend. So that's where our issue is there. That's the problem. There's probably a fatigued metal joint inside that connector. So that is going to be our issue. So the customer does need a new charger, which is a bit of a shame because that's a lot more expensive than a new DC jack. But whatever. So we're going to get a new charger on order for them. In the meantime, I'm going to start doing servicing on this laptop. So because we're going to put an SSD in it, I'm going to do a little bit of prep work. I'm just going to check how much space we've got and stuff like that. So I don't show software stuff very often. And since we haven't done a huge amount with this laptop, I figured I may as well show it now. So I'm going to get this thing turned on. And yeah, we'll just carry on working on it. We're into Windows and I've hidden customer stuff. And you can see here we've got a 1 terabyte drive installed, so 917 gigabytes after system partitions and stuff like that. And we're only using 126 gigs. So we can drop a 500 gigabyte SSD into this, no problem, and have no issues with space at all. So we're going to put a 500 gig SSD in this. Now, we're going to image the data across. So we're going to take everything that's on here, image it to the SSD, put the SSD in, and then when we turn it on, it's going to boot up to exactly what we see now, as if I hadn't done anything at all, except it'll be really fast because it's got an SSD in it. So this is ideal because it's the minimum amount of disruption to the customer, which is always my objective. Lots of people, when talking about servicing and stuff like that, are always just like, just reinstall Windows. On your own computer, that's fine. But for a customer, that's very disruptive because with a customer, they don't know how they set up their computer. They don't know how they got it to the way it is now. They want it to be as it is. Customers don't like change. So in the vast majority of cases, you want to try and preserve the existing Windows install at all costs. So that's what we're going to be doing here. Now, the app that I'm going to use to do the imaging is called Drive Snapshot. I've mentioned it on this channel before. It's not an app that I recommend for what I'm doing here. There are better ways of doing this, and if you look down in the comments below, there's going to be a slew of comments from people saying, use Macrium, use Acronis, use insert that one freeware one that's based on Linux. Clonezilla, that's the one. Use whatever. Loads of people are going to put down suggestions, and all of those are probably better than Drive Snapshot for what we're doing for the reasons that you'll see. However, the reason why I use Drive Snapshot is because I use it for all of my imaging, including when I'm cloning off of failing hard drives. Drive Snapshot is really good at handling failing drives, which is what I'm often working with. And because it's good at that because it has a very verbose output. It's very easy to see what it's doing, how many bad sectors it's hitting and things like that. So you can look at the progress and make a judgment call as to if you think that this imaging process is actually working properly or whether you're just getting rubbish in, rubbish out. The other thing as well is most other cloning apps are capable of doing this, but Drive Snapshot also makes a really nice image backup, which you then restore onto your destination drive. And I like that because the first thing I'm effectively doing is backing up the customer's data, and then I restore that backup to another drive. So we are providing minimal risk to the customer's data because once I've taken that backup, which is not a cloning process, I'm just reading the contents of the disk. Once we've taken that backup, we can put the old hard drive to one side and the customer's data is safe, or safe enough, you know. So that's why I'm going to be using Drive Snapshot. As I say, this is not necessarily a tutorial video. This is just how I do it. Make of that what you will. As with a lot of computer repair, it's very difficult to do things in a certain way and say, this is exactly how you do this. This is the correct way of doing it. Look at lots of methods. Look at other people's ideas, draw your own conclusions, and try different things to see what works for you. That's what repair is all about, in my opinion. But yeah, otherwise feel free to tell me I'm wrong in the comments down below. Past that, before I start, I need to. So we're gonna clone a 1 terabyte SSD down to a 500 gig. Now we've got less than 500 gigs of data. However, because of the way drive fragmentation works, that data is going to be spread out across the drive. And one of Drive Snapshot's strengths and weaknesses is that it will clone the drive sector for sector. So if there's a bit of data out at the 600 gigabyte part of the drive, then Snapshot will want to restore it to the 600 gig mark on the destination drive. So you get something that is sector per sector accurate. Now that's really great from a forensics perspective, but it's really bad if you're trying to restore onto a smaller drive. So to head this off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink the partition size down to make sure that we don't have that problem. So I'll right click on the start menu and click disk management. This is very slow, so there's going to be a lot of jump cuts in this, but yeah. And then we'll right click on C drive and we're going to hit shrink volume. And we'll just see how much it says it can bring that volume down by. Because I'm going down to a 500 gig drive, you don't get a full 500 gigs on a drive because of losses and technical reasons. Likewise, we've also got various system partitions here as well. So I want to get this down to about, like 400, 430 gigabytes, around that, just to make sure that I'm definitely undersized, because I can always expand the SSD partition again afterwards. So let's let this query and it'll tell me how much it can shrink the drive by. Right, our initial shrink estimate is done, and it's saying that we can get down to 477. That's probably low enough, but I want to go lower. I said 400 to 430. I want, like at least 450 just to be safe. So let's see if we can do anything about this. The reason why it's only letting us go down to about 477, despite the fact that we've only got 126 gigs of data, is because some of the data out in the middle of the drive is unmovable system files. There's various things this could be. It could be master boot record stuff. It could also, most likely, it's system restore points. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to quickly go through, empty the trash, clear the system restore points, stuff like that. All right, while that empties, the system restore points were probably good enough, so I'm going to hit shrink volume and do another query, and we'll just see if that's enough to do the job. It was. There we go. So now we can come down to 217. So again, notice that's still more than 126. I don't know what else it is that's holding us up there, but I don't really care. We're well within the parameters I'm aiming for now. So I'm just going to smash in. The amount that I want to shrink, I want to end up with 400 gigs. So let's just type in 500,000 first. It's nearly there. So let's go 51, 50, 300, 9. There we go. That brings us down to about 400 gigabyte sized partition. Shrink. It's very tempting to say, well, why wouldn't you just shrink by the maximum possible amount of space? Because especially if you can expand afterwards, you'd be right. However, I also find that shrinking is much faster if you don't reduce down to the absolute minimum. If you go somewhere in the middle, it has to move less stuff because the hard drive now has to move everything that's outside of the space we're now shrinking to. So it's going to sit on this spinner for a while now. So yeah, once again, if you were using a better imaging program like Macria Macronis or whatever, you wouldn't have to mess around with this. However, as I say, I'm too lazy to learn another program. I like Drive Snapshot. It's not the best, but I know it very well. Better the devil you know. So, right, that is done. So we've now dropped to 391. Don't ask me why it's 391 and not 400 that we just saw it at. That's just the way this works. So I'm going to shut this down now. I'm going to pull the hard drive back out and plug it into my workstation so we can image it. So let's get Snapshot open. And I'm going to hit backup disk to file. And I shall select all the partitions on this drive. So I'm not going to restore all of these partitions because a lot of the ones out the end are just recovery partition stuff, which in my opinion is not helpful. There are people who disagree with me over that, but if you want to recover a computer, you plug in a USB flash drive. Recovery partitions are not helpful in my opinion, but they can always be remade at a later date. That's very easy to do. So you'll notice we've got this chunk of free space in the middle because we shrunk E down. So obviously that was by design. So let's hit next. And I'm going to browse to a save location. And I'm going to put this in Dell Inspiron 5000. And I call it $disk because that means it automatically names the files depending on what partition it is. Start copy. And off it goes. So again, Snapshot, nice interface, nice and verbose, is compact, but it tells you what you need to know. What it's doing, how far it's got, how fast it's going. And if it starts finding bad sectors, it's got a little bad sector ticker that will appear in the bottom right, so you know that there are problems with the drives. And because it's counting bad sectors if it comes across them, you can make a rough guess as to what the likelihood of that disk image actually being functional is. But the great thing is, even if the disk image is no good when restored, as long as the snapshot is successful, you can still open the snapshot and browse the contents of it. So this is really good for just rough as guts file recovery as well. It's not like, lots of people also say, oh, you should be using DD for that. This is quicker and easier than DD for my setup. But as I've said lots, this isn't the best setup. It's just how I do it. Anyway, I'm going to leave that to run, and I'll see you guys when the snapshot is done. Right, our snapshot is now done, so I'm now going to disconnect the drive and I'm going to swap it out for this crucial MX500 500GB SSD. So I'm going to stick this in and we're going to restore the snapshot onto the SSD. Okay, now I'm going to restore complete disk image from images, and I'll just select the image I just made. And I'm going to restore it onto this MX500 that I plugged in. So this MX500 is uninitialized. It has no partitions on it. I've done nothing with it at all. I don't need to. Snapshot is going to automatically recreate all the partitions, the boot sectors, all the rest of that exactly as it was on the old drive. Now, not all of them are going to fit, so it's going to spit out a load of errors at me saying, oh, we don't have room for these extra partitions. But that's fine because it's going to make the early system partitions and the boot sector and the boot manager, it'll do all of that for me. So let's just say next. Yes, it's going to overwrite HD3. There's nothing on it anyway. So here we go. Here's the error saying, we've only got this amount of space. Yep, just restore as many as you can. We do know that it has enough space for the system and boot partitions and the C drive, which is what I care about. So, right, we don't want to do anything with this. Go away, go away. There we go. And now we're restoring onto the SSD. Now that's done, I've just got to swap the drives out into the laptop's cage and put it back in the laptop. So I'll now put all of this back inside and screw it all together, and then we can actually move on to servicing, which is mainly just going to be software stuff. We've got to do a build update, check what's running in the background, just tidy the thing up basically and just make it as nice as we can. There we go. So that's an exact match. SSD back in. And in case people are wondering, we could have put an M.2 SSD in over here. That was entirely possible. I just don't keep those in stock generally because I tend to only buy them in when I'm doing gaming builds or something like that. For a laptop like this, where we already have a SATA port anyway, doesn't really make a difference. You could stick an NVMe in there if you want, but it's not something that the customer is going to benefit from. If they're using the computer where disk speed is critical, then you're probably using something that's higher end than just an Inspiron anyway. So there we go. Now we have a non-mashed USB port. Good. I didn't put the battery in. I'm just sitting here thinking, I'm sure the battery was charged on this, and I'm sure that it should be charged and it should power on right now. There we go. Quite a long post time that time. Where the RTC battery had been disconnected, it was doing RAM training again, so it sat on a black screen for quite a while. Luckily, one of the things I like about modern Dells is that they have what's called the sign of life feature, where it turns on the caps lock light while the screen is black, so you can see that it's turned on. Of course, something more useful than that would be to just have, a power light, but power lights are out of fashion these days. I wish that status LEDs would come back in fashion. Disk activity, power, that kind of thing. So we didn't have to guess. Anyway, let's set the BIOS again. Right, now I know it starts and runs, I'm going to turn it off again and give the laptop a physical cleanup, because now I'm done with the hardware, I'll do that physical cleanup, so it's just nicer for me to use. Right, now we've got a nice clean laptop that's a bit more pleasant to use. We're booted up, and we've got something that's a bit faster to use as well. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check that we've resized our partitions. So I'm going to disk management. Go away, Trusteer. You're probably going to get uninstalled. Right, let's right-click on C and extend volume. And we're just going to spam next a load of times, and it will extend it as far as it can to fill up the remaining space. Done and done. Right, now the first thing I want to know is, am I on the latest version of Windows? So I'm going to do WinR and type in WinVer for Win version. And we're currently on Windows version 2004, so we're a couple of versions out. So what I shall do now is I shall take my Windows 10 flash drive, and I'm going to plug that in, and we're going to do a build update on it. So if you don't have a Windows 10 flash drive, you can very easily make one. Just Google search for download Windows 10, and you want to download the Microsoft Media Creation tool. And that will help you make your own Windows 10 flash drive that you can use to install or update Windows or repair Windows on computers. It's a critical thing to have in your toolkit. You should absolutely have one. Even if you're a layman, very useful to have lying around. Right, so let's open up that flash drive. And I'm going to run setup.exe. And this is going to do what's called an inline build update. And so we're running the Windows installer, but because we're running it from within Windows, it will update the current version of Windows to the version on the drive, preserving all user data and apps. This is effectively the same as just running Windows Update through. However, it's much, much faster to do a build update off of a flash drive like this. Windows Update is really slow for doing this, and it may not even offer you the latest version of Windows, because Microsoft roll out updates in groups, random groups. So you may not be on the latest version at any given time. So this way you can forcibly say, get me up to the latest version. This is critical for me to do on servicing jobs, because if I don't do this now, it might do it automatically the day after the customer picks it up from my shop. And that means that A, the customer is going to be like, oh, well, clearly they didn't install the Windows updates. What was I even paying for? And B, depending on the spec of the laptop, like if it still has a hard drive or something like that, if the computer still has a hard drive, after you install the build update, it might need defragging. So the build update may slow the computer down a huge amount as well. And then the customer is going to be like, well, I picked it up and a day later it was slow again. So it's really important to make sure that you get updates like this installed when you're servicing. So all I'm going to do is just click next a lot of times. So I'm going to zip through this and I'll catch up with you guys once we're on the latest build again. Just a pro tip as well, this installing Windows 10 screen we're currently on is actually just a full screen window. It's a borderless window. I can actually press the start menu and escape out of it, which means I can actually go into settings and I can set the system not to power off while we're doing updates. And if you're doing servicing, I strongly recommend you just say, when plugged in, don't go to sleep. So we can just set this to never and never. And that'll make sure that the computer doesn't go to sleep while it's installing updates, because there's nothing worse than leaving the computer to run this update, then coming back an hour later and discovering that it went to sleep and it's still on 10%. Also, one last pro tip as well. I mentioned about this screen being a borderless window like that. While you're on this screen, you need the flash drive to be plugged into the side of the laptop. Once this progress bar gets to 100% and the laptop reboots, and then you have the centered text on the screen, at that point you don't need the flash drive anymore and you can unplug it and go and use it on another computer. We're back into Windows, and if I do another WinVer, we're now on 21H1, which as of the time of recording is the most up-to-date version. Good. Right, so if I check the system tray in the bottom right, we've got a lot going on down here now. So I'm going to do a little bit of tweaking on the start menu and the taskbar here and just tidy this stuff up. So firstly, the start menu hasn't been arranged in any meaningful way, so I'm just going to unpin everything and we'll just reconfigure this into something a bit tidier and that has a bit more logic to it. So let's just drop all of that off. And the right click on this trackpad is horrendous. There we go. Right, give me search icons, no Cortana, and taskbar settings. So let's make everything nice and visible so we can see what we're doing. And while I'm here, I'm going to set up desktop icons and some other customizations. I'm not going to go into the full details of my servicing philosophies in this video because I am going to do I've got another servicing video lined up which I'm probably starting after this one actually, which is purely service, and I'm going to go into more gory details on that one. Okay, so now we're on the actual correct version of Windows. We'll actually connect to the internet and do updates. Okay, while we wait for Windows Update to do its work, we've got like three antiviruses running on this computer. We've got McAfee, which is probably expired. This probably came with the laptop. Yeah, that's expired. Good, so we can remove that. Your trial ended 1,167 days ago. Good. What about Norton? Norton has a subscription on it that is on auto-renew. I will advise the customer not to renew that. However, my policy is if someone's paying for it, then you leave it alone. So we'll leave Norton alone. However, I am going to make sure that Norton isn't trying to defrag the SSD because that's a thing. Yeah, disk optimization is turned on. I don't know if Norton actually tries to defrag SSDs or not. However, I'm not going to run the risk, so we just make sure that that is turned off. The Windows defragger is smarter and will not defrag an SSD. We've got some restarts to do for the Windows updates. I'm going to cycle this through Windows updates until it's done, and then I'll get back to you because this is going to be a couple of reboots, I think. While I'm here, I'm just going to check what's in View All Optional Updates. I usually don't bother installing optional updates, but I have a quick look just in case there's anything relevant in there. We've got some driver updates and stuff. I'm going to stick these in. I think that's worth doing. Those all look identical to me. However, if they are, I'm sure it'll decide that they're not needed. Right, I'll get back to you once Windows Update is done. Windows updates are done. We're not worrying about optional quality updates, that kind of thing. These are just update previews. They come in normally over time anyway. Okay, let's close that. And now let's immediately shoot news and interests, for being a waste of everyone's time. And also meet now, for being a waste of everyone's time. And I'm also going to shoot the language bar. The language bar tends to appear if you have done build updates and stuff like that, because Windows always installs under US English for some reason or other. So if you get stuck in this situation where you have the language bar but only one language installed, what you've got to do is add another one. So I'm going to add in English US. We're not going to install any additional packs. Install. And then as soon as it appears, we then remove it again. And now the language bar disappears. So that fixes that. And now I want to start removing things. So we're going to immediately uninstall McAfee. Goodbye. And I'm going to rearrange some of these icons because all the system and program icons are out of order. And while we wait for that, I'm going to set up the start menu. Start menu done. And looks like McAfee is going to take a little bit of time to uninstall, so I'm going to start doing background apps while I'm here. So, time for Registry Editor. Lots of people ask me why I don't use Task Manager to disable things on startup. This is not a permanent solution, is why I don't do it that way. If you just keep disabling stuff in here, you end up with a whole load of garbage on this menu. It's not the correct way to disable background applications. I'll go into more details on my servicing video, but yeah, there's a reason why I do it this way. Adamant IT. Right, rapid storage, no. Mouse driver, no. Audio, no. Audio, no. Machine. Java updates, no. Good, that's that. Right, sorry to see you go. We'd love to hear you, White. No. Alright, and we will restart in a moment. I'm going to go ahead and do scheduled tasks now as well. So stuff that runs on startup, there's a couple of places it runs from, but most of it is either running out of those registry entries or out of Task Scheduler. There's a couple of other places as well. Like, there's also system services, but these days I generally don't touch services unless I have a reason to go into there, because there's not a lot to be gained from messing around with the services in my experience. But again, I won't go into details now because I'll start waffling. Right, support assistance, no. Google Update, yes, because it actually works. That McAfee one can stay because it's going to self-delete on the next reboot. Norton can stay. That can all go. That's disabled anyway. Adamant IT. Right, that's that. Let's give it a reboot. We should find that after this reboot, this laptop is actually starting to feel as fast as it should do now. So, because it's still had a lot running in the background. It's a bummer we can't get rid of Norton, but I feel like an 8th Gen i5 should feel a little bit quicker than this. However, we are still installing updates and uninstalling other things and that kind of thing. And plus, also, it is a mobile CPU, so yeah, cut it some slack. Can I have a taskbar back, please? Fine, we'll come back to that. I'm going to bring up system, and I'm going to clear the system restore points just to make sure that no one can system restore back to before all of the servicing, because that'll undo all my work. Good grief, the phone today. Adamant IT. One moment, let me just look that up. Adamant IT. Oh, some days it be like this. Okay, right, we've cleared the system restore points, so that's fine. Sometimes, depending on what mood I'm in, I just switch off system restore. Depends on the computer, what mood I'm in. Because system restore on Windows 10, I find is rarely helpful. Once in a blue moon, it can get you out of a bind. However, 9 times out of 10, when a computer's not starting, system restore doesn't work, in my experience. And as I say, your mileage may vary. I've no doubt there's going to be lots of people who go, oh, I use system restore all the time. Good, glad that works for you. Never seems to work for me when I do it. So, yeah. However, we've got plenty of space in this, and it's a modern laptop. I generally tend to turn off system restore on older stuff or stuff with very low storage, where I'm trying to save as much space and as many CPU cycles as I can. So yeah, right, that's done. I think we're done here. Let's take a look at Task Manager and just see what the startup looks like there. That looks much nicer. There we go. So as you can see, instead of just disabling things, we've actually taken them off. We've removed them from the startup list. So that is much more helpful. Performance. We've got something going on in the background. Who's doing stuff? Report. Oh, yes. I'm going to kill report, because it's a big pile of bollocks. And this is exactly why. Oh, it's Trusteer, isn't it? There we go. Get in the bin. I hate this program so much. It's supposed to provide additional protection for online banking and stuff like that. But it's a case of, like, if you don't have a secure connection to your online banking, your computer has bigger problems, and Trusteer isn't going to do anything about that. It's not how people get attacked. If you want to know someone's banking details, you call them up and you ask for them. It sounds weird, but literally that's how it works. Right, that's sorted. Let's do some last tidying up now. So Chrome wants to run in the background, which there's not really any valid reason for that in my opinion. So I'm going to say no, do not let Chrome run in the background. The only reason why you might want to is if you're using Chrome extensions. Well, it means you can get push notifications and stuff like that from Chrome even when there are no Chrome windows open. But also that's just simply a vector for people to be able to spam you, because notifications are the new pop-ups. And they need to go away, unfortunately. So yeah. Right, we're done with apps and features. Our CPU is now looking much more healthy. We're now flatlining, more or less. And our SSD is flatlining. That's good. Groovy. I think I'm about done. What was I about to do? Oh, yeah, that's right. We've got to update Store apps. So let's just open the Microsoft Store. And I'm going to go Downloads and Updates. Get Updates. And we're just going to make sure that any apps that are installed are up to date. Because, again, these things will update in the background. They do self-update. However, they seem to do it at annoying times. So I find it's always good and it's always nice just to make sure that these things are all fully updated when you're doing a service. So I'll let those done. Then after that, I'm going to shut it down. We're finished. So let's see. Is that all? I think it is. I think it was just those two. We're pretty much done. I also tend to remove a lot of stuff from the App Store. or rather installed apps. Like if we go down Start menu, 3D Viewer, Feedback Hub, Hidden City, Hidden Object Adventure, Microsoft News, Mixed Reality Portal, the Netflix app. You know, a lot of this stuff is just bundled apps that come with Windows that the customer is almost certainly not using. And I tend to uninstall them because the fewer apps that are installed, the fewer apps there are getting automatically updated in the background. And these apps are all free. If the customer actually ends up needing any of them, if this customer happens to buy a VR headset for Mixed Reality Portal for use on this laptop, they can just download that again, you know. So in fact, I will go through and just quickly blitz those as well, and then we're done. Right, uninstall. We could get rid of a load of the Dell stuff as well, but none of that is running in the background, and none of that will be getting updates, not periodic updates anyway. Hidden City, Hidden Object Adventure, that might be a game that they've actually downloaded, so I'll leave that one alone. News, no one's using it. Get rid of that. No one uses the Netflix app. If they did, it would be at the top on the recently used programs list. They go to the website. OneNote for Windows 10 is obsolete because they've got Office installed anyway. There we go. That's tidied up the start menu a little bit. That will do. And again, as said, if they need any of those apps, they're all free downloads from the App Store. So very easy to put those back in place again. Good. Right, and I've just had a quick look at the desktop icons as well and just made sure that those are tidied up and in order. So this thing looks smart now and it feels really snappy to use. This is very responsive. Good. Right, my job here is done. Past that, I'm going to shut it down. Right, and that's my job done. So, thank you very much for watching, everyone. As always, my support links are down in the description below for my Twitter, my Patreon, my Discord, and my Instagram. Probably, I need to add that. Otherwise, stick around for the end card to see more stuff you can watch. And if you liked this video and you want to see more content like it, give this video a thumbs up or drop a comment down below. And that tells the YouTube algorithm that this is the content that you want to see. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time. Bye.